Austin, Albert Lea, Hayfield, Lyle, and Southland Public Schools. For this coming year, we have 30 students from Albert Lea participating. 13 of those students participated last year, and they're returnees. So students have the opportunity to participate for 3 years in a row if they choose to do so. The program is a STEM program. It's science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's experiential learning. Those students are outside learning. And I brought a student who participated last year, so I'm going to invite her up in just a moment so she can tell you more about what they do. This is a big commitment when students sign up for this program. They're committing to 8 Saturdays during the school year. They go from, I think it's 9:30 to 1:30. Jenica will correct me if that's wrong. We bus them at no cost to them to Austin, and they have their class, they have lunch, and they're bused home. And then in the summer, they get 20 days of instruction for the same hours. So it's a big commitment for them. As I said, the costs are covered through the integration grant. At the end of the year, the program culminated in almost like a science fair. Students got to show what they learned through the program, and there were a lot of choice, it seemed, in that. There were some that did a play that they wrote, all having to do with the topic. Last year's topic was water conservation, and I think this year's topic is on animals and habitats. Jenica probably knows for sure, so she will tell you about that. The project was inspired by a program called Project Excite, and it was a gifted and talented grant funded program through Northwestern University, and so Austin modeled their program after this when they created it. I'm going to invite Jenica, and her mother is Maria Olson. She's an interventionist at Lakeview School, to maybe give you some more specifics. You want to tell them what you did during the program or what you liked about it?
We did a lot of outside things like going to a river and finding microinvertebrates, and we did.
What about your journaling that you did?
It's called the Jeffers Journal, and every day at the end of the day, we would write about what we did, and we would go to a teacher, and we would write something about what we learned from each teacher.
As a parent, the Saturday thing, we talked about commitment. If you're gonna do this, honey, that means you're gonna do it. Every month, you're gonna get up and you're gonna go on a Saturday, no matter what's going on. No issues whatsoever. She loved the program. In the summer, again, we did some camps. We had to give up dance camp to do this, and no issues. Very positive. Met lots of new people there, some that she keeps in contact with. And, their project at the end that she talked about, it was very science fair-like, and they got to choose what type of project you want to do and who do you want to do that with. And it was new kids that she was doing it with, not in her comfort zone, and I appreciated that for her, being pushed outside of that comfort zone. So I can't say enough positive. It's so exciting. There's more kids that can do it. She loves it.
Could you tell us a little bit about your project?
I did it with a partner, and we were doing, reusing water bottles and boxes we made a fish tank out of paper, and then we made octopuses out of water bottles.
What grade are you in, and what grade is your partner in?
I'm in 5th now, and she is going into 7th now.
Have you been in the science fair? So science has been an interest to you before?
I haven't done the science fair, but I liked Project TQ.
Mark, any questions?
No, sounds fascinating.
We have 30 students from Albert Lee participating this year. 13 of those are returning for a second year. So, and they are 5th and 6th graders returning, and all of our new students are 4th graders.
Okay. Do you have an idea what your project's gonna be this year?
No.
You could do mice and bring them home for your mom.
There you go.
We're not.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you
Yeah.
coming in. Tell us, I know there's more about this
Absolutely.
program.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. Funk.
There we go. Okay, just a few things this evening. The first report, and I think last time I spoke to the board, the HVAC project at Lakeview, there were some sensor issues and something was not working properly. It was new, but it was a pretty warm building in September. Those issues have now been resolved, and so I think that as the year progresses, the controls will get better control of the system, and we should have good results this winter and into the spring with that. So now that that's complete, the oldest systems in the district are the high school at 14 years old. So I know that was a real concern of Bruce Olson when I started, was getting some of the boiler systems up to date, and so I think thanks to Lori's great financial ideas on how to get this done and Steve's work on it, we are at least on the HVAC side of things as good as we can be right now for the future. The Lakeview Boulevard, I don't know what to tell you. It was supposed to be done by start of school, then they told me by September 21st. Now I see in the paper that they're getting charged significant dollars for the delay, and I can watch across the lake and not see them working, so I don't know what, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Steve keeps on giving us estimates every couple weeks, and so, I mean, the bus drivers have done a great job. I think it's about a 4 or 5 minute addition to the trip for families, students, but it still is a disruption, and hopefully, before it freezes, they will get it taken care of. Increased opportunity achievement. Good news story here is we have about 20 more 6th graders than we were projecting last spring. So of course, we want to make sure that the kids are really at these real numbers, and the target deadline we really look at is 1 October. If kids are staying in class, then for financial reasons, okay, we know we're going to keep them. 1 October has come and gone. We still have the students. So Steve posted for a position or positions and has got it figured out so that we're adding a section in core areas of social studies, math, phy-ed, science, to reduce some of the class sizes in 6th grade in particular at Southwest. Communication went out last week to parents that might be impacted by this, and the new sections will begin on Wednesday. So some kids may have been on a certain team or in a certain class with students. They may have been switched. So if you hear anything along those lines. Targeted services started today for grades 1 through 5. We'll be starting kindergarten later. We figure pretty long day for kindergartners right now, so a little bit later in the school year. I think the December timeframe, we're looking at starting the kindergartners. We've started after-school credit recovery. 65 students are enrolled. 40 of those have multiple credits to make up. And then we have an after-school tutoring program for high school students in the core areas for kids who need additional help. That'll be starting November 3rd, and then targeted services for grades 7th and 8th. 8 will start November 3rd as well.
How are you staffing those?
Kathy, you want to talk to the secondary piece on the targeted and the high school?
Credit recovery at the high school. We have 2 teachers, it was posted, and we have a social studies teacher and a math teacher. And then targeted services, we have an 8th grade English and an 8th, 9th grade math teacher. We also have a new success coach at the high school. And so once the after-school tutoring begins, along with targeted services, she will shift her start time and work through the afternoon and to the end of the tutoring program as well as targeted services. So we would have 2 adults there both evenings. So 2 days a week, the same as credit recovery. And we also will have busing. Albert Lee Bus will drop at a number of strategic places in town for credit recovery, targeted services, and after-school tutoring. And this is the first time we've tried that at the high school. I know Tanya is looking at the students right now who are enrolled in credit recovery to work with the bus company to try to figure out where those strategic spots will be. So that will be starting November 3rd. Southwest, going to look for a math teacher at least one of the 2 to 3 evenings. And so that's been posted, and we don't have that filled yet. Elementary, we have some positions yet to fill, similar to last year, so it's also posted online. The principals are pushing hard on a couple of staff members to see if they would maybe share. So we're fairly well-staffed in the elementary. And Southwest, we have 1 interested person. In the high school, we have more staff than we anticipated would be interested. So the high school program should, so we'll see how it goes. We haven't really done the 8-12 piece, so this will be, and try to tie it in with our 8th and 9th grade academy students to try to encourage them to stay after and get assistance, so.
The other good news I wanted to publicly state is the fact that we get federal E-rate funding for phone and for internet through the federal government. This is the first year that the federal government has said we are not only going to give you this funding for reimbursing phone and internet expenses, but we are going to actually give it to you if you meet the qualifications for infrastructure. So the district received $155,000 in E-rate funding. And so what we're going to be able to do with this is replace some network switches in the district. And then, we put in wireless access points, 4 or 5 years ago. We are now going to be able to replace those with high-speed current models. And we'll still have them if we need to expand them into the elementaries. But this is, again, credit to Jim and his tech department, specifically Reed Olvey here, who manages the E-rate funding. And these federal dollars are able to keep us on the cutting edge. You hear a lot about districts that go to one-to-one in technology. One of the biggest problems they have is their wireless infrastructure is not ready. And I think ours is still working pretty decent today, so we haven't maxed it yet, and now we're going to go to the next level with it. So kudos to the tech people. Subject to your questions, that's completes my report.
I had some questions about I don't know if it was an opinion article or about, in the paper this week about the building waiver for the calendar.
Yep.
I've had some questions come, is it okay if I ask
Sure.
those right now? Some of them were wondering why, if we're stating academic reasons, that we're choosing to go with a construction waiver.
As I can state, and as I stated in the article, there are two ways to go about doing this to start school before Labor Day. One is through a construction waiver. One is through the flexible learning year waiver. Kathy consulted with the MDE on this, and based upon the fact that the board approved a one-year calendar, we chose the simplest way to go forward, which is common through districts that start in August throughout the state, is to just go ahead and move forward with the construction waiver.
And is there also an academic waiver, or is that the flexible?
That's a flexible learning year.
Okay. And can that be done for just 1 year, or?
It could, but I think they granted for, the current law is granted till 2019, I believe.
That you can do it year by year, or what?
Well, the board would have to, again, go back and approve the calendar from year to year.
Oh, okay. And what construction project will be happening at Halverson next year?
Ashley, do you have that document? Can you zoom on that, please? In August, the board approved this funding for the next 10 years for the long-term facilities maintenance plan. As you can see, and scroll down a little bit, Ashley. Their bottom line is this: $400,000 has to be, is the threshold for a district. In for the next school year, the bottom line will be $689,110 in the Albert Lee School District. $400,000 is the projected project at Halverson for the tuck pointing that'll be going on there. I believe there's also a parking lot component to Halverson that will be redone next year as well. And as you can see, the threshold is $689 next year, and it goes up to $1 million, $1.3 million, $1.3 million, $1.3 million, et cetera, moving 10 years forward. So, and again, this was part of the long-term facilities plan that the board approved on August 17th.
And those funds come out of which category or which pot of money?
Okay, the chart that's in front of you is the new long-term facility maintenance. So that type of category is what used to be health and safety plus deferred maintenance. So they expanded what deferred maintenance means, and that's like the tuck pointing project is what that falls into that category of like the old deferred maintenance. And then, of course, we also, in addition to the long-term facility maintenance piece, we have regular operating capital funds that also has projects in that.
Thank you. And is there a point that the waiver comes to the board for a decision, or how does that work?
The board approved the calendar, and its administrative role is to send a letter, which was sent to the MDE, stating our intent to execute the construction waiver because we're expending $689,110. So the board's role was to approve the calendar for 16-17, which you did, I believe, in March. And so the board is now moving forward, or the administration is now moving forward. If I do recall, the board approved the calendar 5-1 with one board member against it.
And so the actual waiver that we use, that's just kind of at the district level to choose?
The board approved a calendar for 2016, 2017. As I believe I stated at the meeting, it would be up to the administration to figure out a way forward to meet the board's intent, and we have done that.
Okay, I remember at that time kind of talking about there were different options that we could pursue, so I wasn't sure kind of what the path was for that.
Correct, there were two options, and there have always been two options. One is the flexible learning year option, the other is the construction waiver.
I pushed the button for you, Bill. I just want to thank everyone for their patience as I've been working with the freshman football team and we are complete now, so I will be back a little bit more in meeting duty. Not that I let the other go, but it was a lot of fun, had a good group of kids, and hopefully we got a great group going forward. Thanks.
If not, we'll move on to item 8, Curriculum and Instruction, World's Best Workforce. Kathy Niebor.
So this used to be referred to as the SAR report, and we are now moving into year 3 of the World's Best Workforce Plan. And so what the requirement is that yearly we publish a report. So last year's report is on the website. We're going to review that a little bit today, and then we will look at the results from last year's goals. And one goal in particular, as a school board, I'd like you to consider possibly revising based on our student achievement. And then we file a summary report with the Department of Ed, and we move forward with a new plan for the year. And so I'll talk also about that as we go through. The last piece is to periodically survey affected constituencies about their connection to and level of satisfaction. And MDE doesn't make a recommendation as to how often, just periodically. And since we are just coming off year 2, moving into year 3, that's another piece to maybe consider at a future year. This is your current pathways to success, and so each of those targets are what we're going to talk about as we move through this report. First of all, how do we evaluate students' progress? We use the FAST testing, which I know Mary Jo has spoken with you a number of times about. Currently, we do it fall, winter, and spring, and then some students also are assessed 2 additional time. We also assess our incoming kindergartners, and that's how we determine our 70% proficiency. In the elementaries, we have appropriate interventions with identified students, those who are not proficient. They receive additional instructional time through our interventionists, and now our interventionists and other staff receive assistance through our instructional coaches. We also use our MCA scores, grades 3 through 8, 10, and 11, and we use some of the Department of Ed's guidance on the report card site. We have in the past used college and career readiness through the ACT suite, which was Explore, Plan, and ACT, and now that the Explore and Plan are going away, we are using a product called Naviance, which will allow us to do some college and career readiness work with our 8th and 9th graders in particular with a 4-year plan. We also, because all of our juniors last year, almost all of them took the ACT, there's a college and career readiness component to that, which they do prior to the test. So we have a couple of college and career readiness pieces. This is new data this year that we added based on what some other districts provide to the school board, and that's taking a look at our early childhood family ed screenings along with our census data. So the census data for last year of our 3- and 4-year-olds was 490 students. We screened 185 of those students for kindergarten, 52 5-year-olds and 2 6-year-olds. So this is data that comes from early childhood family ed. They also report on the number of events that they hold for participants, 253 one-time newborn infant contacts with 466 adult contacts. They also had 31 other events with 680 children participating and 653 students. In addition to early childhood family ed, we also have school readiness, and we really have kind of two components. One is through early childhood, and that is 130 events that they held this year. And then Mary Jo, with some of her staff, also this fall met with licensed daycare providers to provide some literacy training. And also last spring met with the area preschools to do some reading and math training to prepare students. So,
Quick question.
yes,
Is it common for school districts to meet with daycare providers?
that's not a question I can answer for you. I don't know.
Brenda Casilius, the Commissioner of Education, was here a couple of years ago, and we toured the district. And one of the places we took her was to a home daycare facility in which our community ed had been working with that individual for basically lesson plans. And she said she has never seen that in any of her tours of the state of Minnesota. So I think it's fairly uncommon.
Yeah, and Mary Jo had indicated this morning that her last meeting was a few weeks ago, and she receives very positive feedback from community who ask her to keep coming back. So as a result, this is our FAST assessment data on last year's kindergartners. And your goal, of course, was to have them 70% proficient when they came. And we had 76% who met reading benchmarks and 72% in the fall met math benchmarks. And at the end of the year, 86% met reading benchmarks and 78% met math benchmarks. So that would be one of the goals that you've set that you may want to consider setting instead of at 70%, 80%, just to push us forward. So. We then have a process for identifying strengths and weaknesses of our instruction. We continue to have PLC processes and teacher evaluations. In a couple of, hopefully next week, if not shortly thereafter, we are going to review the curriculum cycle. Myself, Mary Jo, Steve Kovach, and Mark Grosskloss, looking at what we're doing at the secondary level. We also have added some new pieces. So last year's report, we do have a system to look at curriculum and instruction through PLCs. But we also added the MCA benchmark test results, and I know you aren't going to be able to see this, but I would just like to hold one up for you. This is 10th grade science, and what this is every test aligned, every test question from our students last year aligned to a benchmark. And the first step is we took the 8th grade science, and our test results were not where we wanted them to be. And last week we spent our first day with 8th grade science teachers pulling apart these benchmarks and then pulling apart a document that's called Achievement Level Skill Indicators. And then we took some similar districts to ours and took a look at their curriculum. And it was, I think, very enlightening for a couple of our science teachers and myself and the PLC coordinators at the high school. We could really see where some of our deficits are red spots here, how they aligned in our pacing calendars. Had a serious discussion about some of our 9th grade standards that are in 8th grade and whether that was appropriate. So that's the process we're going to use moving forward. They spent one full day, and then they're going to continue to talk about it in their PLCs, and then we're going to come back in a couple of weeks to determine if we need another day for 8th grade science in particular. And then English will be our next group looking at this piece. The high school science department chair has also pulled this apart for 10th grade and is working with some of our new teachers on our 10th grade science. So those three pieces, we've talked about revisiting our secondary essential outcomes. We chose essential outcomes a few years ago, and now it's time to revise those and revisit those. Did we choose the ones which the Department of Ed is assessing via MCAs and via non-MCA testing work? So the other pieces we're looking at, of course, visiting some other districts. In particular, in English, Mary Jo attended a conference last week and visited with some secondary folks, and we're looking at making some contacts for some secondary visits. Strategies then to improve instruction. We have 2 new elementary instructional coaches, one at Southwest and a SPED instructional coach at the high school. This is a little repetitive. We have our Minnesota standards. with the achievement level indicators, the MCA benchmark reporting. We also offered reading instruction K-12 for all of our new teachers for a full day, and all of our special education teachers, K-12, received reading instruction. We also kept even our secondary teachers for some discussion about some of our reading instruction. Not that it will impact them in the same way as some of our other teachers, but I think it was very enlightening for them to hear how some of their elementary and middle school colleagues work with the benchmark instruction in particular. So just kind of a general awareness there for our secondary teachers. We're going to look at updating our curriculum review cycle, and then Lori and myself and Mary Jo and Dr. Funk are going to meet at looking at our district-wide staff development initiatives and how are we spending our money and what are the big pieces we want to support from the district level. TD&E, our teacher development, we're in year 2. We added Teach Point last year and have spent some time with Mr. Queerum and I updating some of the how that looks to be more teacher-friendly and administrative usable for tracking teacher data. We are pretty much done with most of reviewing the Youth Truth surveys individually with principals and teachers, so that's a new piece. Principals have informal classroom visits, provide feedback. Teachers meet in PLCs and collaborate, examining effectiveness of their instruction. Practices that integrate high-quality instruction, so PLCs again, professional development in place to support teachers in their use of standards-based systems. This year with our Chromebooks and Kenneth. Kenneth has been spending a lot of time developing videos and building a video library for teachers for small pieces and big pieces using the Chromebooks, along with our ATPPS coordinators. And all of our teaching and learning team were retrained on cognitive coaching this fall, which we use for our observations. So these are the school board goals: 70% of children ready for kindergarten, third grade reading, third grade math, 90% growth targets, college and career readiness, graduation rate. So I'm just going to review the results of our testing and results from last year. This is one to consider revising. We hit the 70% at the beginning of the year, which is what we aimed for, and we need to look at aiming higher. This is 80% of students proficient on reading MCAs. This is for 3 years, 2013, 14, 15. So you can see the trajectory up to grade 5. You've seen these results in a different way. We're not at 80%, but we look to be moving that way. You can follow students. For instance, the 2013 grade 3 are the red 2014 grade 4 and the green 2015. So it's a nice improvement. We're not at 80%, but that is our goal. So that is reading, and this is math. And you'll see grade 11 is on year 2 of the MCA 3s. So there's a 0 there for the 2013. And we are implementing a new math series, K5. This is our students who hit achievement growth targets, and this is an interesting formula from the Department of Ed. Basically, it's taking students who are proficient on the MCAs, and then they have determined, based on their previous year scores, so we can only go grades 4 through 8, so we start MCAs in 3rd grade, and consecutive years through grade 8, you can see if they are on target, achieving appropriate growth based on their proficiency. MDE also adds another piece in here in a different way that we haven't added, and they consider students who maybe aren't proficient on the MCAs, but make high growth as something also to look at. So that might be another piece for us to add in the future. We don't have that piece in here. And this is the math. And again, if you look at purple, we are not at 90%. And this is our four-year graduation rate. And so at the bottom is the Albert Lea High School alone at 88.7. And then the district-wide is our ALC and Albert Lea High School together. So we are not at 90%, but our high school is pushing towards that goal. And then this is the disaggregated data by free and reduced lunch, special ed population, and our Hispanic population. And this is for the entire district, not just the high school. Yes?
With the special ed, is there some kind of average in whether or not they would complete in 4 years or go longer when they're special ed?
I don't know. We'll ask Sarah, I'm sure.
For our students that go into our transition program, they're not considered a graduate until they're done with our program. And so that does impact the numbers. We typically have between 8 and 10 students that go on to our transition program.
One of the things you could perhaps send the board members or Kathy, you can go into the MDA data site and you can look at six-year graduation rate for special ed, and that'll give you a better indicator on the success of our special education students.
And this is ACT reporting. This is the data that comes from ACT directly, and it's by graduation class. So all of our juniors who took the ACT last year are not included in this because they haven't graduated yet. So this is just students who graduated up through 2015. And the composite score at the bottom is pretty much the score that you see in the media. And you can see our individual scores. So 2012 through 2015. We are typically above the national average and, well, I should say almost always above the national and below the state average in composite. And we are again this year. Just conversations around the state, we suspect that our state average will drop this next year with the class of 2016, with every student in the state, for the most part, taking the ACT. But we are looking at some other pieces for ACT preparation right now. We offer some coursework through community ed, and maybe there's some better options out there for us to prepare our students. The last piece is met with the district curriculum committee last week and for input into the plan. And I think one of the two pieces that were pointed out in particular is that they like the idea of a guaranteed and viable curriculum, and that it's a concern of members of that committee when students are in a grade level but don't receive the same coursework that someone who might have another teacher has. And that's our goal, is to have these same curriculum for all of our students. And the other piece was in the area of career and tech ed, that we look at increasing the rigor of all of our areas for career and tech ed. We have a new Riverland Perkins board, which has been formed, and we will be meeting in a couple of weeks. We're excited because Riverland has hired Al Hauge, who was instrumental in our youth apprenticeship program, to work with all 8 of our schools in our Perkins Consortium. So, and I see, Dave, you're on the email with Uchenna and Christina Abling to talk about the food science and ag programs at the high school. So also hoping maybe to bring Jeannie Garbers in on that discussion. So that was one of the points that was made at the district curriculum, is how do we increase the rigor of those programs for our students. Our building goals have to be aligned, established in our district's pathway to success. School improvement plans are all aligned to those goals as well. PLC and individual goals are aligned to the building goals, which are aligned to the district goals and the pathways of success. And then, of course, we look at student achievement data weekly to determine growth towards all our goals. So that is basically last year's plan and what we've added for this year. And my recommendation would be that you think about and discuss whether or not we should change that kindergarten readiness goal to 80% or somewhere in between 70 and 80.
believe our review time is for goals would be, what, the January timeframe?
Whenever the board decides. Yep.
Okay.
So that's fine.
I did have one question with regards to the ACT.
Sure.
Now, it went to, last year it was all the juniors had to take it, and
If-
then, did they
yes.
then change that again?
Yes, of course. Yes, so this year we have to offer a college entrance exam, and the district chooses that. So we probably, like 99% of the other districts in the state, have chosen the ACT. We can't contract with the state to provide that testing, we provide it locally. So now we deal directly through Pearson now with the ACT testing. So we will offer it to all students in the junior class on April 19th. So the counselors are gearing up for those presentations. And then any seniors who did not take it last year on a statewide testing day, and we have about a dozen, if less, right now, students. So they could be students who transferred here, students who are in another district. So yes, we will offer it to all juniors. It was a graduation requirement for this year's juniors, and that was removed from the legislation. So now we just have to offer it. And whatever MDE doesn't pick up, the Pearson settlement will pick up the cost to districts for taking the ACT.
And so do we have the numbers in yet with how that, the juniors did?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We have some general numbers. We don't have, because they're not graduated yet, the actual report will come from ACT.
We don't have the roll-up.
Yep, yep. The students have their individual, we can't really compare ourselves to the state because those numbers aren't released yet. We just have our local numbers. We do have those.
So that'll make it fairly interesting on how we review that particular goal.
Yes.
And those, if I remember right, they have the ability to retake it up until probably, what, March of their senior year?
It might even be later, but yes,
Okay.
correct, they do.
So then we wouldn't see the actual number because they used the best number at the end to report, correct?
Perhaps.
Yes. The one test I think that a lot of high school teachers find valuable is the ACT, and it's unfortunate that the state chose to. But the alignment study did not come back well. Minnesota standards did not align well with the ACT. And so the Fed said you can't use that for accountability because the test doesn't align well.
So a real key takeaway, I think you've heard Kathy talking about this through this evening and perhaps earlier this fall. One of the things Kathy's doing a great job with is she's getting into the high school and she's meeting with teachers and she's looking at, okay, here are the standards, show me your curriculum, where are the gaps? And what we are finding is there are, particularly in some grade levels, there are some very significant gaps where teachers have, well, this is what I teach and this is how I teach it. And they're not, what they've been teaching is not aligned to the grade level standards at all. It might be aligned to a different grade level, but not the grade level that's being assessed. And so Kathy has just done a tremendous job, and Mark Rosklaus has done a tremendous job trying to get the staff to, here's the alignment to the curriculum, here is where we need to go. So I'm already seeing just great things from Kathy and Mark as far as turning the high school around here.
And I think in fairness, the high school teachers that I met with last week were appreciative of more data from MDE, more information, more results. They want to do right by students, and I think it is, so far, it's been very amicable discussion around curriculum, so that's good.
Bill? Yeah, I think I heard you ask about goal setting, and I was hoping to do that at one of the meetings in December.
Perfect. I have a couple more for you, Kathy.
Oh, okay.
You're not getting away.
5 minutes, I was told. You know.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Mark. The other question I have is, it's always a little tough for me to watch the slides and try to figure out from a cohort standpoint how these kids are doing. Is there value in doing that, comparing, the class as they're progressing through, or is it better to see how they're doing at the specific grade level in each year?
Well, I think the cohort, as we saw in our elementary reading, was really powerful to see that group of students moving through. Certainly from year to year, you can see if there's a big drop. Why is that? Is that a curriculum issue? Is it a teacher issue? Is it a supervision issue? That's on us to decide when we see a big drop, which you do. You see some drops here. I know the 8th grade math is another concern. Why that drop? And the high school math teachers were all over it right away. Now they have a little bit more data with the benchmark reports from Pearson. So yeah, really you need to look at it both ways. Yeah.
Okay, and then the other comment that I had was, with regards to the one goal that we're looking to revise because it's met, all of the goals, I believe when we put these together, were stretch goals. And, I think it really, begs to emphasize the fact that, the concentration that was put into this particular goal and all the work and the effort that you're seeing now through the rest of the goals, and as people are starting to buy in, I would expect to see those other numbers go up. So I want to say thank you because I know that that's the most important spot to affect our future. And,
Sure.
16 to 1, as far as dollars spent at that age level. So, thank you.
I think the early childhood numbers, just, Jenny has in early childhood family ed the numbers, and then we have in the office the census, and to put those together to say, oh, maybe we need a little more work on that as well. So, but kudos to early childhood. They really are putting great effort forward.
And to our community partners on that too, with United Preschool, the Children's Center, the local daycares in town. They're working with the district on it. I think, and again, I think on the Pathways document, we talk about our community partners. The Dolly Parton Library, the United Way, all of those have significant impact on our kindergarten readiness.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to effective and efficient operations. Item number 9.1, special ed co-op update. Sarah Keckel and Lori Volz.
Good evening. We're here to update you on the Level 4 Special Education Cooperative. And as you know, we are not moving forward with the 5 districts. So we've been in discussion with Austin and how can we meet student needs? Because Austin, as well as us, has some significant needs to work towards. So right now, we're looking at 2 different programs. It would be a Level 4 behavior program, and between the 2 districts, it's an estimated 40 to 50 students total, and that would be about 8 classrooms. And our SUN program, which is students with unique needs, and that would be lower functioning students that typically have a category of autism or developmental cognitive delays. And that's an estimated total of 10 students between the 2 districts. And we would need 3 classrooms for that, an elementary, middle school, and a high school classroom. We have found a potential location, and we've been looking at that, and that is in Austin. And it's the Corcoran Center, so I don't know if you're familiar with that. It is a former school, and it's located right next to St. Edward's. So Lori and I went with several people about a week ago and looked at that location, and it seems to be a good fit to fit our needs with classrooms pre-existing, a gymnasium, and cafeteria. Do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say the facility itself, because it is a school building, it's configured well for this program. It has a gymnasium and has, typical classroom-sized rooms. One piece, though, with that facility is that the HVAC would need to be totally upgraded, and part of the roof has to be also redone, and basically windows replaced. It's just no, as far as the building envelope, we don't need to do tuck pointing. That part is very in good condition in that regard. But so when I'm getting the estimates for the upgrades that would be needed. And so once we have those figures, we'll do an analysis with, a couple different ways. That would help determine what the cooperative would offer as a purchase price on the facility. And then also would be another double check, just confirming that upgrading this building would be cheaper than building new, which we definitely think it will be, but we'll be analyzing it from all those angles.
And we are not going to bring anything for your approval until we have all the numbers and we have everything firm, as opposed to last spring.
Yep, so that leads us to the next steps, is right now we're working with an attorney to look at the legal documents that would be needed to move forward, and then we would bring that forward. We're not gonna bring that forward until we have the estimated costs at the same time. Are there any? Yep.
The cooperative, it's a two-district cooperative, so everything is basically split 50-50, or are there different dollar amounts for different types of programs that kids are in? And how does that work then from a standpoint, from a business standpoint, as far as employees and all those kind of things?
Do you wanna answer most of those?
There'll be a couple different pieces here. First is going to be the lease purchase of the building itself, and the two districts involved would share the cost of that annual lease levy payment. So that would be that piece. As far as the operational piece, that would be, the cost to be calculated based on the number of students that are served. So in that way, we're being billed and paying for the piece that we're responsible for based on the number of students we'd be sending. And then as far as the staffing goes, what we're looking at is contracting with the Austin Public School staff, because they currently have a level 4 program. So it'd be, in some ways, a way of shifting their existing staff from their program to this program that would be allocated to this cooperative. So we would look at those kinds of avenues that would be our strategy for staffing the cooperative.
Would be, the cooperative would be a standalone type of a business, and so let's just say down the road, Otana wanted to have 3 level 4s or something, said, hey, you can do it better. Now they can tuition them in type of thing?
That is the beauty of a cooperative legally. The cooperative can accept other students from other districts, and they would be billed for their fair share of it. But a real plus with a cooperative is that if we feel our program is full, we can deny. So there's different rules on like a joint powers versus a cooperative, and we found there were many great pluses to a cooperative format versus joint powers.
Any other questions?
Last thing then, with a cooperative, then we are just, the cooperative, again, you mentioned was a standalone, so then we will just be billed. So we don't have anything other than what the cooperative decides over here from the board level on what they're gonna charge for each position. That's our only, I'm gonna say, skin in the game at that point.
Yes, that is correct. So, yep, operations will be, actually, we feel that this will, within this type of format, it'll be much more cost-effective than what we were looking at that 5 district. Not only the cost of the facility, we believe will be much more fair, more cost-effective, but we also believe the operational piece will be cost-effective for this type of program. This type of program is more expensive, but when you look at what some districts pay to send one student to a special program like this, can be much more than what we're looking at per student. So we do believe this is the most cost-effective way to offer the programming these kids need. Yes, this cooperative will have its own board.
We'll move on to item 9.2, annual policies for review. Mr. Quorum. We'll take these all as one action item.
So there, excuse me, there are 3 policies up for review. These are all just review a policy with very minor changes. Actually, on 2 of them, they're pretty, there's hardly any. I know she sent them out to you ahead of time with those changes, and she has them up here. This must be 504, right? So this is student dress and appearance. The only change is a couple of the words in the beginning of the opening paragraph where they changed it from "it is the" to "the policy." So no content changes here, nothing else. This is the MSBA model policy, and so very small changes in 504. 507, which is corporal punishment, there is one added paragraph. It's paragraph 3, exceptions. I assume, this is just Jim here, but I think there's probably a preponderance of evidence legally. There's been enough court cases now that they feel comfortable putting this in here, basically saying that in extreme cases where there's bodily harm as a possibility or a death, a teacher or a school employee can step in and restrain. So that paragraph was added. The rest remains the same.
Again, on that paragraph, that was an MSBA.
Yes, that was
policy
MSBA
request.
model policy
Okay.
that they asked that if you're following their policies, that you would include. And then finally, on the last one, 522, I think the only change there is the title of my position. I know it's in 2C and also in another spot, maybe 3D. And then that's it.
Do I have a motion to accept? Do I have a second? Second. Any questions or comments?
I had a question just reading through that paragraph that was inserted for the corporal punishment. It says, I'm assuming that the two different groups are singled out because the first would be licensed staff and then the second would be unlicensed. And it says, for the teacher principal, it says, force necessary under circumstances to correct or restrain a student or prevent bodily harm or death to another. Do you know what circumstances might be when a student is restrained under this wording?
Well, I think it's in extreme cases. I think the only time, I was just talking with Sarah, it looks like even under special ed, you're probably going to see some of the restraint part as far as an IEP that may be going away in the next couple of years as well. So I think we're talking about very extreme cases where we're talking about somebody's going to definitely be hurt or killed if we don't step in and do something. And again, I think it's consistent with some of the legal cases that are out there, and so I'm guessing that's why they put it in as far as the model policy language.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move into closed session. Need a motion to move to closed session under Minnesota statute, section 13D.03 for labor negotiations. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?